Hello friends, and welcome to Creative Cooking. Today we're making pasta salad. So let's talk about that pasta for a minute. We've got imported, we've got domestic, different brands. One thing we don't want to use is elbow macaroni. Not for this one, not for an oil-based dressing. What you want is something like this, the tricolor rotini, which is a spiral, has a lot of nooks and crannies. You could use penne rigata. You could make this farfalle, which is means butterfly in Italian. We usually call them bow ties. But I'm going to use this one today, radiatore. I think that's how you pronounce it, because they look like little radiators. It's a good sized pasta with a lot of ridges in there to hold our dressing, which is oil and vinegar based. But since I'm in a small family here, there's only 2 of us, I'm only going to make half a package of pasta. So I'm going to zero out my scale and measure out exactly 8 ounces, or 8.05 ounces. Close enough, right? A half a pound of pasta in this case. And pasta, well, the shape actually determines volume, believe it or not. I'm going to put that away with one of these nifty paper binders. They're made out of steel and work really well. And then we're going to make our dressing, which is very simple. The ratio for an oil and vinegar dressing is 3-to-1. So we've got 3/4 of a cup of oil and 1/4 of a cup of red wine vinegar. Now you could use cider vinegar, you could use white wine vinegar, you could even use balsamic or just a little bit of balsamic to sweeten it up. But that's the basic ratio. And we're going to put it in this repurposed jar to actually make the dressing. Okay, there's a couple of reasons for using a repurposed jar. To that we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon each of salt, Italian seasoning, which includes things like basil and oregano and thyme, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and last but not least, some red pepper flake. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. If you want to keep this completely vegan, you can leave out the cheese. I suggest you put it in, otherwise it does make it taste quite a bit better. And again, one of the reasons for using the jar is that you can just cap it tightly and just shake it. This will help to mix all the ingredients, actually emulsify it somewhat, and it also gives us a place to store it, because we're not going to use all of this in this recipe, so we'll have a little bit left over. And yeah, you want to shake it up real good and let that macerate for a while. That is, to reconstitute the herbs and the garlic powders and so on. Now here's another tip. After you've cooked your pasta, according to package directions for al dente somewhat, while it's still warm, you want to go ahead and add some of this dressing. Don't do that with mayonnaise. Don't do it with a mayonnaise-based dressing, but an oil and vinegar dressing, absolutely. And the reason for this is that pasta is still technically cooking, and it's going to absorb some of that flavor, which includes the oil and the vinegar and the spices and the salt. And then as for the vegetables, well, that's sort of up to you. I mean, you can use the old standbys of onions and celery and so on. But I find that these red onions, which are very mild, have a nice little crunch to them and nice color. Got that beautiful purple color. And then cucumbers, same thing. They have a nice tender crunch to them and add a lot of flavor and color if you leave some of the skin on. That's why I usually do it this way. Leave a little bit of the green so that when you cut that, you're going to have that variegated edge. I did this in the deviled ham video. Said it looked like poker chips, and in a way it does. So I want to cut these into what I call 1/4 rounds instead of half moons. I want them to be a good size so that you can stab it with a fork and pick it up and chew on that all by itself. And then we're going to do the same thing with tomato. You can use cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes. In this case here, I'm using a Roma. I'm going to cut that into 1/4 rounds as well, about the same shape and size as our pieces of cucumber. Notice that we've got a nice contrast of color, red and green. They're opposite sides of the color wheel, and just looks nice. And you can remove that pith too if you don't want it. Once you mix it in, you add your onions. We're going to add black olives. These are the mild ones, not the ones that are very, very briny, but it's just lightly salted water. I'm adding a little bit of pepper. And then I'm going to give this a basic mix. I want to see if I have enough veggies in there or not. It looks like it could use a little bit more, maybe a little more tomato, a little more olive. That's up to you. And I'm also going to put on some not grated, but crumbled feta cheese, which gives it a nice little flavor, a little bit of texture and color variations. And then if you think it needs it, after it's been refrigerated, you can freshen it up a bit with just a little bit more of that dressing. You don't want it greasy, but you do want it to taste good. So give it one final mix and you are ready to serve. I hope you give it a try, and I hope you come back each week for more great videos made for people who like to cook. Until then, ciao.